You wake up and something feels wrong. Your arm's numb, your speech is off, or your vision is blurry, but you tell yourself it's just sleep. What if it's not? Every morning, countless Americans ignore subtle changes in their body changes that are actually the first signs of a stroke. They go make coffee, brush it off, and minutes later, it's too late. The truth is, stroke doesn't always hit like a lightning bolt. Sometimes it whispers right after you wake up. In this video, I'll show you 5 specific warning signs that may appear first thing in the morning and why you should never ignore them. Knowing what to look for could mean the difference between life recovery or irreversible damage. Let's begin with the first and most urgent sign. One of the most common and most urgent early signs of stroke is sudden weakness or numbness on one side of the body, especially when it appears the moment you wake up. You may notice that your right arm feels heavy or that you can't grip your toothbrush properly. Maybe it's your leg that feels like it doesn't belong to you, or you stumble as you get out of bed. Often this kind of asymmetry is brushed off as sleeping in a weird position, but it could be something far more dangerous. You see, strokes that occur overnight can result in blood flow being blocked or disrupted to one hemisphere of the brain. That means the side of the body controlled by that hemisphere, often the opposite side, may become weak or even paralyzed. The key difference between a pinched nerve and a stroke-related weakness is that with stroke, the change is usually sudden, significant, and affects an entire side face, arm, and leg. Let me give you a real-world example. A 62-year-old man named Robert from Atlanta woke up one morning and noticed his left arm felt numb. He assumed it was because he'd slept on it awkwardly, but when he went to pour coffee, he dropped the mug. Then, walking toward the kitchen, he tripped over nothing. His wife noticed he was dragging his foot and called 911. Doctors later confirmed he'd had an ischemic stroke sometime during the night. Thanks to her quick thinking, he received clot-busting treatment within the critical time window and recovered most of his function within weeks. That's why timing is everything. If you ever wake up and find one arm or leg suddenly weak, numb, or difficult to control, especially if you also feel clumsy or unbalanced, don't wait. Don't chalk it up to poor sleep posture or fatigue. Instead, ask yourself, is this weakness just one-sided? Is it getting worse or staying the same? Can I hold things like I normally do? These questions can help you assess the severity quickly. The most important action you can take is to call emergency services immediately. Don't try to wait it out. If it is a stroke, every minute counts. The faster treatment is given, the greater your chance of recovery. It's also a good idea to take note of the time you first notice the symptom, as doctors will use this to determine eligibility for certain treatments like TPA, a medication that dissolves clots. Now that you know what one-sided weakness or numbness could mean, let's move on to another silent warning that can show up just as suddenly, this time in the way you speak. Imagine waking up and trying to say something as simple as, "Good morning," but your words come out jumbled or slurred, or worse, nothing comes out at all. If this happens to you or someone you love, it's more than just grogginess from sleep. Sudden speech difficulties upon waking can be one of the clearest early signs of a stroke. Speech is controlled by specific areas in the brain, primarily the Broca's area and Wernicke's area, and when a stroke affects these regions, it can impair your ability to speak clearly, find words, or even understand language. What makes this especially dangerous is how easy it is to ignore or excuse. Many people brush off slurred speech in the morning as dehydration, sleepiness, or the result of medication taken the night before. But in reality, it could mean a clot is cutting off oxygen to the parts of your brain responsible for communication. Let me share a case that illustrates this. Margaret, a retired teacher in Arizona, woke up and tried to ask her husband if the coffee was ready, but her sentence didn't come out right. Her words were slurred, and she couldn't find the right terms. Her husband noticed something was off and asked her to repeat herself. When she couldn't, and her mouth looked slightly drooped, he called 911. At the hospital, scans confirmed she'd suffered a minor stroke in the left hemisphere of her brain. Fortunately, she arrived in time for treatment and began speech therapy within 48 hours, significantly improving her recovery. If you ever wake up and feel like your speech is not normal, trust your instincts. Slurred speech, garbled words using the wrong words for simple things, or being unable to find your words at all. These are not just signs of being tired. They're neurological red flags that your brain may not be functioning properly. And if others notice these symptoms before you do take their concern seriously. People experiencing strokes are often unaware of how badly they sound to others. So what should you do? Just like with sudden weakness, your first move is to call 911 immediately. Don't wait and don't try to talk it out or walk it off. If you can't speak clearly, that's already reason enough to get evaluated. And if someone else sounds off to you, ask them to say a simple sentence like, "Today is Sunday." If they struggle, it could be a sign they're having a stroke. Speech is one of the most sensitive indicators of stroke, and changes can happen fast. But if caught early, there's a strong chance of recovering much or even all of your ability to speak. Now let's look at the third warning sign, something that could affect how you see the world around you. You open your eyes in the morning and something feels off. Maybe it's a blurry patch in your field of vision. Maybe you see double or one eye seems to have gone dark altogether. Sudden vision changes upon waking can be an early and critical sign that a stroke has occurred overnight. The scary part. Many people think it's just tired eyes or assume they slept in a bad position, but when it comes to stroke, your eyes can be the window into your brain's distress. The brain's occipital lobe processes visual information, and when a stroke affects this area or the optic pathways, the results can range from mild blurriness to complete vision loss in one or both eyes. But here's the twist. Sometimes the brain tries to fill in the missing information, so you may not even realize how much of your vision is compromised until you bump into furniture or misjudge a step. This is especially dangerous because these subtle deficits can lead to accidents and serious falls. Consider the story of Henry, a 68-year-old former truck driver from Ohio. He woke up and couldn't read the numbers on his alarm clock. At first, he assumed he had just forgotten to clean his glasses, but when he looked at the kitchen calendar, the left side of the page seemed to disappear. His wife noticed him tilting his head awkwardly while reading and suggested he close one eye, then the other. That's when they realized his right side vision was significantly impaired. They called 911, and doctors confirmed he had suffered a stroke affecting the occipital lobe. Because they sought help quickly, he was enrolled in early rehab and eventually adapted to his visual field loss with assistive strategies. So how can you tell the difference between normal morning fogginess and something serious? Ask yourself, is the vision change sudden? Does it affect just one eye or one side of your visual field? Do you see double when trying to focus? If the answer to any of those is yes, don't wait it out. You should also be alert to visual neglect, where someone may ignore objects on one side of their body without realizing it, a common sign when the stroke affects the brain's right hemisphere. As always, your best course of action is to seek emergency care immediately. Don't schedule an eye appointment for next week or assume it'll clear up after coffee. In stroke treatment, speed is everything, and early detection can prevent more severe complications down the line. So far, we've covered weakness speech and vision 3 of the major ways your brain tries to alert you that something is wrong. But what about signs that affect your balance and movement? Let's move to the fourth early symptom that could appear right after waking up, and why stumbling might be more than just morning clumsiness. You step out of bed and suddenly the floor doesn't feel steady beneath your feet. Maybe you stagger to one side, bump into the wall, or need to sit down because your body just won't cooperate. While it's easy to blame this on a poor night's sleep or even age-related stiffness, sudden trouble with balance or coordination after waking up can be an early and dangerous sign of stroke. Balance and coordination rely on a finely tuned communication system between your brain, inner ears muscles, and joints. When a stroke affects the cerebellum, the part of the brain responsible for balance and movement control, you may feel dizzy, unstable, or as if your limbs aren't responding the way they should. This is especially concerning if the symptom appears out of nowhere and affects your ability to walk straight, keep your balance, or coordinate basic movements like brushing your teeth or reaching for a cup. Let me tell you about Carla, a 70-year-old woman from Minneapolis. She woke up one morning and couldn't seem to keep her balance. She thought maybe she had gotten up too fast, so she sat down again. But when she tried to walk to the kitchen, she veered to the left and nearly fell. Her husband noticed she was holding on to furniture and walking strangely, almost like she was intoxicated. He helped her to the car, but a smart neighbor saw what was happening and urged them to call 911 instead. At the hospital, imaging revealed a stroke in the cerebellum, something many people overlook as it doesn't always present with slurred speech or paralysis. Because she received care early, Carla avoided a potentially devastating fall and long-term disability. So, what should you watch for? If your balance is suddenly off for no clear reason, or if your coordination feels clumsy or disconnected, treat it as a red flag. Try a simple test stand still with your feet together and close your eyes. If you start to sway or feel like you're falling to one side, that's not something to ignore. And if you can't walk in a straight line or feel unusually dizzy while lying flat, those could be signs that the part of your brain handling coordination is under attack. As always, the answer is clear. Don't wait it out. Call for help immediately. Many people with cerebellar strokes delay treatment because the signs are vague or not as well known as facial drooping or speech issues. But a delay can lead to permanent balance problems or a serious fall, which can be fatal in older adults. Now that you understand the risks of ignoring sudden balance changes, let's move to the fifth and final early warning sign. It's one that's often misunderstood or minimized, but when it hits, it can feel like a thunderclap inside your skull. You wake up with a headache so intense it stops you in your tracks. Not the dull ache from poor sleep or a skipped cup of coffee. This is sharp, sudden, and unlike anything you've felt before. When a headache hits this hard, this fast, and without any obvious reason, it could be more than just a rough morning. It could be a stroke, particularly a hemorrhagic one where bleeding occurs inside the brain. A sudden severe headache, often described as a thunderclap headache, is a classic sign of bleeding in the brain. It can occur when a weakened blood vessel bursts and pressure builds quickly within your skull. This type of stroke is less common than ischemic strokes, but it's often more deadly and demands immediate medical attention. The pain might be centered at the back of your head behind your eyes or feel like your entire skull is being squeezed. Let me share the story of James, a 66-year-old retired postal worker from Denver. He woke up at 6 a.m. with a stabbing pain on the right side of his head. He thought it might be a migraine, even though he'd never had one before. But as the minutes passed, he started to feel nauseous, then confused. His wife noticed he was speaking slowly and seemed disoriented. When the paramedics arrived, they rushed him in for a CT scan, which confirmed a hemorrhagic stroke caused by a ruptured aneurysm. Thanks to fast action, neurosurgeons were able to stabilize the bleeding, and James eventually made a full recovery after weeks of rehabilitation. The key thing to remember is that not all headaches are created equal. A typical tension headache builds gradually, often improves with rest or hydration, and isn't usually paired with neurological symptoms. But a stroke-related headache is different. It strikes out of nowhere. Often described as the worst headache of my life, and may come with vomiting, neck stiffness, confusion, or vision problems. If you or someone you love wakes up with this kind of pain, don't take aspirin or go back to bed. In the case of a hemorrhagic stroke, blood thinners, like aspirin, can make things much worse. Instead, call emergency services, immediately describe the intensity and timing of the headache, and be prepared to report any other symptoms like weakness, slurred speech, or dizziness. So now you've learned about 5 signs, each one different, but all equally urgent. Sudden weakness, speech issues, vision changes, balance problems, and severe headaches. These are the ways your brain might be telling you that something is seriously wrong. But here's the most important part. If you act quickly, there's a real chance of saving brain function, independence, and even life itself. Let's move into our final section where we'll bring all this information together and talk about what you can do starting today to protect yourself and those you love. If you've made it this far, you've already taken a powerful step toward protecting yourself or someone you care about. Stroke doesn't always arrive with flashing lights or sudden collapse. Sometimes it begins quietly in the stillness of early morning with a strange sensation in your arm, a slurred word, or a wave of dizziness that feels easy to ignore. But you now know better. We talked about 5 critical signs that can appear right after you wake up: sudden weakness or numbness on one side of your body, slurred or jumbled speech, unexpected vision problems, trouble with balance or coordination, and a sudden severe headache with no clear cause. Each of these is your brain's urgent call for help. Recognizing them early and taking action immediately can save lives and preserve your independence. So, what should you do next? Be prepared. Share this knowledge with your family. Pay attention to your body, especially in those quiet morning moments when symptoms often go unnoticed. And remember, when in doubt, call 911. Don't wait, don't guess, trust your instincts. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and share it with everyone you know. You never know whose life it might save. And if you have any questions, or if you've experienced any of these signs yourself, leave a comment below. Our team will respond as quickly as possible with care and clarity. Thank you for watching. Take care of your health and stay safe one morning at a time.